lot of people believe that once the police is there,
they'll handle everything.
They can handle everything. But the truth of the matter is that the police is not trained for this kind of job. It's a specialized field on its own, and you need people to be specially trained in how to manage sports security.
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce you to the founder and head of security at the Confederation of African Football, CAF.
I always tell people that our job is not just a job. It's actually the prevention of deaths in stadiums.
In this episode, we take a deep dive into the many challenges that face the safety and security of stadiums in Africa.
Which is the reason why you find out that at every little provocation, the police comes out with the use of tear gas.
Tear gas.
And tear gas has been, known to be one of the catalysts of aggravating mass deaths in major sports events, because it introduces the concept of panic,
And the Safe Stadium Initiative, which aims to enhance safety and security operations during Africa football events.
It's not enough to say my stadium is 20,000. Do you have the necessary number of gates that can accommodate 28,000 entry within 1 hour?
Dr. Christian Emeruwa is an internationally recognized expert in football safety and administration.
And we at CAF are very pleased that Eswatini Football Association is the first among the 54 members of CAF to take up this initiative and to host it.
He has served as the FIFA Senior Safety and Security Advisor, overseeing the security and safety of major football events, including World Cups, just to mention but a few.
It will force organizers to begin to take safety and security very seriously, because this is always the last item on every agenda, the last item on every budget.
Yes.
And security is not cheap. It's not cheap at all.
If you haven't subscribed yet, then this is your moment to hit the like button, subscribe, and share widely. And as always, keep it Crimeshield. For all the Crimeshield fans out there, I'm sure you vividly remember my previous guest, Austin Otieno, the NSSO, National Safety and Security Officer in Kenya. And he shed a light on the importance of safe stadiums and why it's critical.
Football brings people together.
Yeah, it's a unifying factor.
It's a unifying factor. We are not going for war.
And today we have a guest, and it is a big surprise, a great honor for the Crimeshield Podcast to have him here. I'll give him time to introduce himself, because I don't think my feet can fit in his shoes. Welcome so much, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Kenya.
And thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
So how do you find Kenya so far?
Well, I think it's like homecoming. As I said to some of my friends, I studied here some 12 years ago.
Okay.
At Strathmore Business School. So it's like coming back home after many years.
Yeah.
It's still the warm Kenya we used to know, where people are welcomed warmly. And it's been quite interesting the last few days being around in Nairobi.
Yeah, I know your schedule is a bit busy, but at the Crimeshield Podcast, we highlight critical issues in terms of safety and security, just to give people a feel of how it is and how things are supposed to be done correctly. And Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania have been nominated to host the CHAN championships. And before we get into that, probably tell our viewers, because as I said, my feet cannot fit in your shoes. Just tell them a brief history of who you are and your role, and then we go into the critical issues like CHAN and safety.
Okay. Well, I don't know where I want to start from now, because I think I'm wearing many hats. My name is Dr. Christian Emeruwa. I have a PhD in Administration and Organization of Sports. I'm also the first African to be a certified sports safety and security professional in the world. I work with FIFA as a senior FIFA safety and security officer, and I've supported FIFA in the delivery of 8 World Cups, including being in charge of the final venue for the 2018 World Cup in Russia. I am also the founder of the Safety and Security Department in the Confederation of African Football, where we kickstarted the department in February 2019. And currently the lead operational head of all CAF competitions, events, and ceremonies, as it were, in areas that has to do with safety and security. I also try as much as I can to give back to society, so I do lecture master students in international sports security at Pan-African University. And of course, I like to write. I keep a column on a sporting journal where I express my views every weekend in the last 12 or 13 years. And of course, yes, I'm happily married with lovely 3 children.
Let's go to now understanding the stadium security landscape. In your view in Africa, how do you see it? What's the current state of African stadiums?
Well, it's a big question. We have challenges. There are numerous challenges confronting stadium security in Africa. As we speak today, the biggest challenge that we have is the fact that most of the stadiums are not compliant with the expected standards that they should be in terms of having the requisite equipment, facilities that will aid safety and security operations in the stadiums. Second problem that is predominant in Africa is the lack of capacity in terms of lack of properly trained experts in this specific field. Before now, you agree that most people believe that when we talk about sports safety and security, a lot of people believe that once the police is there,
they'll handle everything.
They can handle everything. But the truth of the matter is that the police is not trained for this kind of job. It's a specialized field on its own. And you need people to be specially trained in how to manage sports security. Actually, the concept is the 3 S's, the safety, security, and service, because the service element is the key. This is what people should leave the stadium with, the experience that they have in terms of the level of service that they got. So Africa has potentials, a great potential, I would say, because we have the human resources, okay? But we need to take safety and security a bit more seriously. I always tell people that our job is not just a job. It's actually the prevention of deaths in stadiums. When we talk about stadium sports security, we're talking about preventing people from dying. And if you noticed, even up until recently, we still have some incidents in certain stadiums where you have musical shows, like in DR Congo, and people died. Why? Because there was no proper planning, there was no proper knowledge on how to manage crowd management, crowd flows, and even the static crowd capacities, you know. There is a science behind all these things, so it doesn't just happen.
There has to be a plan behind it.
Exactly.
Looking at now, you know, we've had seen you all over Africa with the Safe Stadium Initiative. What inspired that?
Very good question. The Safe Stadium Initiative was inspired based on our initial intervention program that we conducted across the continent. We asked our member associations to tell us what their security concerns are as it relates to safety and security. And the feedback we got from the 54 countries was actually almost the same. Inadequate training, inadequate capacity for the people that are delivering on safety and security, lack of knowledge, and so on and so forth. And we felt that there is need for us to go into every country to come up with something that can address these common problems. And this was how we came up with the Safe Stadium Initiative, to go into every country to concentrate for now in the training of the Premier League security officers. And then all those other security officers who are responsible in the delivery of national and international games in each country, and also give them the materials so that they can also transfer the same knowledge to other stakeholders within the country. So for every country we go into now, we train 40 people. Wow. And it has been quite interesting. Just last year we started it, and within 17 weeks we were in 17 countries.
Wow.
Training well over 680, if I'm not mistaken, people across the continent of Africa. And this year we continue in the same process. We are believing that by the time we are done training this group of people, we would have at least been able to build an army that will understand what is required when it comes to managing a football match from a safety and security point of view.
From where I sit, Doctor, I feel in Africa we need to have like a culture reset when we are talking about security in stadiums. You spoke about it earlier when you said that many people, when you talk about security, they think about the police officers. When they see police, then they say that there's security. But you say that there's a science behind it, and there's importance for training. The Safe Stadium Initiative has really changed the culture of how even the safety and security officers in the respective nations, how they view it, and it got very good feedback. I want us to shed a light on matters to do with crowd control and management. I know it involves a lot of stakeholders who come in play, to make it happen. Tell us more about crowd management, just briefly, in order for people to understand how it comes in and the kind of infrastructure that has to be in place, because there's a lot of stakeholder engagement where you need to talk to the police, the government, private sector, private security. How can this cocktail make any event successful?
Well, the truth of the matter is that we advocate for what is called integrated safety and security operational system.
Yes.
By integrated, we mean that you have to come together with all critical stakeholders that has a role to play in either the reception or the facilitation of the spectators to the stadium and out of the stadium. If we take, for example, any stadium, you will need the police to maintain law and order. You will need the stadium management. You will need private security that will assist you in managing certain critical areas. You also need what we call the stewards, because it's not proper to have policemen in uniform inside the stadium managing and providing certain services which is not supposed to be their job. So you need to introduce the layers of the steward. So you also need to consider the ticketing, because you need to make sure that the ticket is in line with the maximum safe capacity of the stadium. There's a difference between the capacity of a stadium and the maximum safe capacity of the stadium, which is the capacity that the stadium can be safely operated. You also have to consider the impact of the event within the society. So you have to get municipality government involved or authorities within the local government involved. You have to also consider the impact of traffic. So you have to get the traffic police or the traffic unit involved. You also have to consider the effect of an emergency should it happen. So you need to get involved, the emergency services, medical services and so on. So in controlling this whole crowd, say a 30,000, 40,000 group of people, you need materials and personnel. And part of the materials that we basically need are things that has to do with things like barriers, crash barriers that needs to be installed to control the movement of people. You need canopies, you need walk-through metal detectors. In some cases, you need handheld metal detectors. In other cases, of course, you need to have eyes on your gates. That means you need to have integrated CCTV systems working that is connected to your venue operation center. You also need to have a system that tells you how many people have entered your venue. So it means that you need an electronic ticket counting system that will be automatic. So for every scanned ticket holder, you get the figures in your venue operations center to know how many people has come into your venue. And of course, you need also what we refer to as the spectator services. These are people who are there to show the spectators where to go. It is not everyone that knows the stadium.
Yes.
So when they get into the stadium, there should be people to direct them where they go. If you don't direct them, they will find their ways, and they might get into categories where they should not be. So you need the spectator services people to be able to do that. And then once they get into the main bowl, now you are talking about managing the crowd during the course of the game or during the course of the event. And this is where the stewards come in. And as I said, that there is a science to everything that we do. You must consider how many gates you have. It's not enough to say my stadium is 20,000. Do you have the necessary number of gates that can accommodate 28,000 entry within 1 hour? So if your gate does not commensurate with the required number as per the standards that have been established, then it means that you might have a crush outside your stadium. So these are the science that comes into the planning stage for you to be able to understand how many people can pass through these gates and get into my stadium safely. A lot of times, because most of the stadiums in Africa are old stadiums, the gates are limited in number, and as such, you have overcrowding outside. Again, there's what we call the last mile. There's what we call the first mile. Now, most times when events are organized or when sports are organized in Africa, there are no considerations for the last mile, there are no considerations for the first mile. The first mile normally is the distance between where the transport hub is located and where you have your first ticket verification check. The last mile is the point where you have your first ticket verification point to when you get into the stadium. So all these areas needs to be managed, they need to be manned, they need to be controlled. If you don't filter people who do not have tickets between your first mile and you make them to get into your last mile, they will get to your gates, they will block the gates for people who have tickets, and then you have crisis at your gates. So this is why you need these buffer zones. In times we advocate to have 500 meters, 250 meters, 300 meters from the main gates to ensure that you do these proper filtrations. So having this knowledge of safety and security, sport safety and security is such that will empower the organizers in this case to be able to understand that they need to come up with what we call a safety and security operational plan. What is your plan as it relates to your match? And for you to come up with your plan, you must also conduct risk assessments.
Assessments are necessary.
What is the risk level of your match? Is it a high risk match? Is it a medium risk match? Is it a low risk match? Because the density or the level of your risk will determine the amount of manpower that will be required to manage the event. So again, it's not just to say we have a match, we want to play a match, let's get 30 policemen, they will manage the situation, and then you have 40,000 people to be managed by 30 policemen. We have a standard ratio, for example, for stewards, which we always do use, which is worldwide basically. And it is that for a low risk match, that is a match that does not have a very high risk tendency, you have one steward per 250 spectators. For a high risk match, it's one steward per 200 spectators. Okay, so if you don't do this math, you will definitely not get the actual number of people that can manage the spectators that you are bringing into your venue. Again, talking about the entry capacity, you need to get people into your venue within 1 hour, at least not less than 660 people in 1 hour. So if you have 4 gates, you multiply by 660, it will tell you how many people can get into that venue. And those people are the people that can safely get in within 1 hour. So the challenge again that we have, as I mentioned before, is that we have the infrastructure problem, and then we have the lack of capacity by those who supposedly are responsible in deciding how safety and security is to be run and managed at sports grounds and major events grounds in Africa. But with what we are doing now, we are building capacities in every country. We are also building the knowledge. We are also building the ability for people to manage, because it's one thing for you to know that you have a bad infrastructure and to have skilled laborers, knowledgeable people, skilled people who can, irrespective of the fact that the facility is not up to standard, they can come up with a contingency plan that can be adaptable to ensure that people still come into that facility and have fun without having to be at risk. But if you have the combination of bad facility and lack of knowledge, then you're already having a recipe for disaster, which is the reason why you find out that at every little provocation, the police comes out with the use of tear gas. And tear gas has been, known to be one of the catalysts of aggravating mass deaths in major sports events, because it introduces the concept of panic, and everybody's scampering around, and before you know it, there's stampede, So, but if you have people that have the knowledge, they understand that you really do not need to use this kind of force.
Yes.
If you have a controlled management system in place before the event. In anything that we do, we always say that the safety and security operations is not what you do on the day of the event. It is what you do weeks before, months before, in terms of planning, thorough planning, detailed planning, before the event itself. You asked the question about who are the stakeholders that we must get around the table. Yes. Okay, it's a very good question. As I mentioned before, the security officer would have to be there.
Yes.
The police chief who will be responsible for the delivery of that event, we have to be there. Stadium manager, we have to be there. Ticketing manager, we have to be there. The owners of the event, representative, we have to be there. City council, community, municipality, depending on the stage, the level, the magnitude of the event, they have to have representative in that meeting. You also don't forget that you need the media to communicate your plan.
True.
Because you can say in your meeting, okay, we are closing Road A, and you are not announcing it to people, and people are used to coming through Road A. So that is going to cause on its own a security challenge.
Yes.
So we do say that security actually starts from the information that the spectator gets from the point of purchasing a ticket. What information is behind that ticket? You also need to let them know what their rights are. What are the prohibited items, what they shouldn't bring to the stadium.
True.
And then, of course, you also use all other means of communication to let them know the plans of security for that day.
Yes.
If roads are going to be closed, if there are going to be diversions, if there is going to be a creation of new entry routes, people need to be pre-informed
in advance.
In advance, so that everybody is in sync to understand what needs to be done.
The beauty about understanding the safe stadium and making events secure, it trickles down even to other events. And you brought in a critical point about ticketing. I think that has been a thorn in the flesh in Africa for the longest time. You find that people do sell tickets at the venue. So, people don't understand why it is important to have a separate place detached from the match venue area or the event venue area for a ticketed kind of like event. Probably you can shed a light a little bit of why it is important to sell tickets away from the
truth of the matter is that when you sell tickets at your venue, it also means that you have no ticketing plan. Everything must have a plan. You must have a ticketing sales plan, ticketing production plan, a comprehensive ticketing plan. And if you bring people to your venue to come and buy tickets, you have automatically on the event day destroyed your last mile, your first mile, and as such you have no filtration system. So those who do not even want to buy tickets can come at in the pretense that we want to go and buy tickets. But meanwhile, they want to force their way into the venue or the arena.
True.
So we advise strongly that tickets should not be sold around the stadium on match day. Tickets should not be sold within the vicinity of the stadium.
Yes.
Because we do not want people to break these protocols. And once you have 500 people converging at a gate without tickets, before you know it, they will break their way through.
Yeah.
You know, and this causes a lot of problem, and we see it everywhere. You know, but again, it's a learning process. The conscientizement is just beginning,
Yes.
and thanks to programs like yours,
Yeah.
which is a pioneer in this area,
Yeah.
I think we need to talk more about this. We need to get the message out. We need to get more people trained. We need to engage with critical stakeholders that are responsible in the delivery of sports events across Africa,
Yeah.
to say that we can no longer be doing it as we used to do it.
Yeah.
You know, we need to change the mentality, we need to change the mindset on how we approach sports safety and security operations. Because at the end of the day, as I do say, we're talking about human lives.
Yes.
Some people are coming to the stadium for the very first time in their life just to come and have fun. And they shouldn't be coming to the stadium to be killed as a result of our non-preparedness, you know, or lack of preparation. So, or lack of knowledge on how to manage the people we want to invite to our event. So, all this put together means that very soon we are likely to begin to see in countries stringent laws regarding how major events are organized in countries. I know as a result of some of the past crises that has happened in South Africa, they now have a very clear protocol that needs to be strictly followed for any football match that needs to be played. There are people that need to sign off that certain things have been done, and there are people that must be in that meeting to sign off that document to say, yes, we have confirmed that these conditions have been met, and as such, we can go ahead with this event. Until we get to that point where government will also see this as a responsibility to the citizenry to make sure that any major gathering is conducted in a manner that is safe and secured for its citizens. Then we can be sure that probably it will force organizers to begin to take safety and security very seriously, because this is always the last item on every agenda, the last item on every budget.
Yes.
And security is not cheap. It's not cheap at all. So this is something that requires serious concern from all critical stakeholders that are into events and sports.
Yeah. My final question would be with regards to understanding that sometimes there are epidemics or pandemics like the COVID-19, and the dynamics do usually change even how you prepare for safety and security. Kindly, if you can just shed a light on, whether there is when there is a pandemic like COVID-19, what can inform preparation in terms of understanding how to safeguard people?
I think from our last experience, because I was also a member of the expert panel of the WHO during the COVID-19 pandemic, and this has made us at CAF to also come up with a pandemic safety and security guideline, which was a product of us trying to think along what you're saying, that yes, we've had COVID-19. What if we have another pandemic? What do we do? So we decided to work with epidemiologists, medical doctors, public health experts, as well as safety and security experts to come up with a guideline that can at least serve as a guide. But the principle is that you must follow the health experts in your country in terms of the guidance that is being given by the health experts, and adapt it to your own plan. In the aspect of safety and security for football matches, we played the CHAN in Cameroon under the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa was the first continent that played football during the pandemic. When coming out of the pandemic. So the protocols were simply adapted because there was a mass gathering protocol that was established by the WHO. So we took the lead from there. We had several meetings with experts from the WHO on how best we can manage spaces, depending on the nature of pandemic, but I can speak for the last one, which was the COVID-19, which talks about non-contact. Again, that gave opportunity for technology to be introduced on things that can be adapted to technological verifications instead of physical verifications. It also gave us opportunity to talk about how we can reduce number of personnel to reduce contact as much as possible, and of course continuous cleaning, continuous fumigations, and security was now also helping health to enforce certain things like thermal checks of temperatures, which was not really our job, but we had to come in because we are the first line of defense, which was also not our job, enforcing that you must wear your mask, because now we are also the first line of defense. We also came up with innovative ways of spacing in the area of spectators. When we started getting spectators into the stadium, we had different systems that were introduced. Spectators coming as a family, you have a system that would identify them and also make them sit together as a family. We came up with the spacing in between spectators in the stands. We also came up with the idea that food, as we used to provide it during half times, cannot be done in a buffet manner like that. It has to be seriously individually packed. So it's adapted majorly really to the health guidance that are provided by the health experts, and also adapting them to how it can be implemented within the sporting context. And I can tell you that it requires continuous, because it evolves. It requires continuous engagement amongst the experts. And we came out at that point with a very summary guidelines. We used to have 9 zones. We summarized everything to 4 zones. Came up with 4 accreditation zoning system. We started off with closed door matches, no spectators, just the officials and the match. And later we went into partial closed door, where we allowed a certain number of people to come in based on the advice from the various national health institutions in each country, because some countries had a ban on contact sports. Some countries opened up earlier than others. So based on what is happening in the country, we adapt to the situation.
We just had the draw for CHAN just the other day, and not many people understand the importance of the draw and the safety and security measures that are supposed to be put in place. As we wind up, probably you can shed a light on the importance of a draw and the significance that it has in terms of aligning the safety and security of the tournament, regardless of the tournament. And sometimes people think that a draw is just like any other match. Probably take us through the journey of coming up with a successful one, like the one we had in Kenya.
Well, I would say that Kenya was quite successful from a safety and security operations, because whenever we are talking about having a draw for bigger competitions, we are talking about having a high-level guests, coming to the event. This means that event, from our own assessment, is already classified as a high-risk event.
True.
And for you to manage a high-risk event, there are certain security measures that must be put in place. You must clearly define what will be used as the access device by the guests, what will be used as the access device for all the workforce. The process of verification, validation, and the process of screening also has to be captured in your security concept plan. Don't forget, we are not just talking of human beings alone. You also have to consider how will vehicles access the venue, where will they park, what is the capacity. So it means we have to create what is called the Vehicle Access Permit Pass, which is the VAPs, to clearly define who parks where. And of course, the general safety and security of the entire delegation. Although the entire exercise will last for maximum 1.5 hours, but the truth of the matter is that the work behind the scene takes weeks, to set up, to align with the various agencies that will be coming. And if you happen to be doing it at a big scale like we do in CAF, where at times you have heads of governments who would also want to be there, so you also have to align, with the presidential security, presidential protocol, and so on and so forth. So it's a very robust operations, as it were, which requires very thorough planning to make it seamless, so that the guests, who most of whom are VVIPs, would have a seamless welcome experience while also being safe within the vicinity of the venue. So I would say that in Kenya it was quite impressive to see how all the agents, starting from the police force, all the security agencies, the private and what have you, and the local organizing committee team also coming together with CAF team to put our heads together and see how we came up with a great plan that could be adaptable to the situation that we have found in Kenya, and how we were able to deliver it in a manner that people, came in safely and also left safely. I think the most important thing, how you gauge a successful security event, is when there are no incidents. And when nobody has reported of any. So this is basically the issue. As much as we want to play down the security in terms of physical presence, we also would want to have security assured to the participants that you are safe in this vicinity. And this is where the use of accreditation is very critical, to clearly define who goes where and who stays where. We cannot know people by their faces alone. We have to use the accreditation to identify who is working for us.
For the younger generation, somebody out there, including myself, I've been looking up to you for the longest time.
Now you're making me feel like an old man.
No, no, not really. So I just want you to speak a word to them, because in Kenya I've seen, even when I check my LinkedIn, many people tend to lose hope in terms of pursuing security courses and not understanding that security is wide. What can you tell them in that line?
Well, I would say that follow your passion. Don't be in a hurry, but be very inquisitive to learn. Be ready to learn as much as you can. One of the fastest way of growing in any sector or in any industry is to identify a model that you can, model your life along with. Identify somebody that is ahead of you, that is in a place where you want to be, and see how you can try and find out how did he get there. And I think that anybody who is serving as a mentor to others, it's just a privilege. There are many people who should be mentored, and I think this is something that is missing in Africa. In a lot of successful people don't like serving as mentors. They tend to keep the success stories to their chest. Whereas I think it's something that we should be able to freely share, to guide the younger ones and to let them know that there is hope. Your situation may not be 100% where you want it to be, but that doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. We were also there some few years back. I started as a secretary to a security committee in Nigeria for 11 years, before I decided to seek for knowledge in Germany, and this was just the passion driving you to becoming the best that you want to be. And having attained, it's also not a license to rest, because knowledge continues to change and sports is evolving every day. So you must always see yourself as a continuous scholar in your field to perfect your skills, basically. So we still go to school, we still study, we still go to conferences. So I would just say that be persistent, be focused, be determined, be hardworking, and of course identify someone that could serve as a role model for you. And don't be scared to contact the people. Or the person like yourself. Don't be scared to send several emails, WhatsApp messages if you have the number, or LinkedIn contact. I mean, the world is a small place now. And there's no way you keep sending that the person would not one day send you a hi. I have seen your messages, So, I mean, this is, for me, the advice I would give to anyone that wants to take this as a core area of discipline of interest. And I tell you that the future is bright for Africa in this sector, because it's just starting. We have big events in Africa. We don't have enough experts. So It is somewhere that people should begin to look in, and it has the capacity of creating a lot of job for people.
Wow.
A whole lot of job for people. I give the example of Egypt, for example. In 2019, when we introduced the steward system for the AFCON, they did not have the steward system in Egypt. They were using police. But today, they created in 2019, they created what was called the African Security Company.
Wow.
And today, the African Security Company has employed well over 2,000 youths.
Wow.
Who are currently managing all sports security in Egypt. So the police now has lesser job to do. They are just there to support. But the African Security Company is gradually growing into becoming a very massive field that provides job opportunities for youths, thousands of youths across the country. So this is something that can happen in any country that takes this as a very serious area. And all they need to do is come up with legislation, regulations on how these companies can operate within the sporting and events space and see how it booms.
Wow. We have a culture at the Crimeshield Podcast where we have a black book. So this black book, our previous guests come and they give me a question. I haven't read the question myself. So I read the question and then I pose it to the guest seated, and then the guest also gets a chance to write a question for the other guest. So our guest asked that, have you ever encountered a life-threatening security situation, and how did it affect you?
Yes, I have encountered a life-threatening security situation. I remember in a match between Egypt and Nigeria in Kaduna, in a 20,000 capacity stadium or thereabouts. We had a situation where we had well over 40,000 people inside and well over 40,000 people outside.
Wow.
And it was really, really life-threatening. How we manage this, I would not say that there was a scientific method that was adopted in managing it, but the only thing that we did was to ensure that the match was played, because any attempt to say you will not play that match would lead into serious crisis. And secondly, to quickly activate the announcements, continuous announcements that the stadium is full. Even though people were still coming, they still didn't want to listen. And of course, all these are preventable. They are preventable if the right things are done. If tickets are sold, if fences are well built, and if governments do not declare that gates have been thrown open. These were the cases. Government said we have paid for this match, everybody should go and watch the match and support the team. So this attitude is also common in most African countries, where the government believes that if the stadium is full to capacity, then they are showing support for their team. But this is also a death trap. People should get into stadiums using tickets allocated to their seats and not just allowing people to walk into the stadium. So yeah, that was, and it was a very interesting experience because I just graduated from Germany then, thinking I was prepared.
It is called baptism of fire.
It was a big one. It was a big one.
Now you get also a chance to write your question as I conclude the show.
Thank you.
So there you have it from the expert, Dr. Christian Emeruwa. Why should you ensure that you play a part in ensuring safety when you're going to any sporting event, whether local or international? Critical things. Working with stakeholders is very critical. Having the goodwill of government and all relevant stakeholders is also paramount. What is your role as a person who's coming to support any team? When the stadiums are full, they are full. Accreditation is very critical. Communication continuously is also very critical. I'm sure you've learned a thing or two. For the young people, you've had it. Be passionate about what you're doing and seek out mentors. Don't worry if they don't reply your messages, because at the end of the day, you'll also get there at some point. But when they respond, be aggressive and ask those questions, because that is how you can be able to grow. This and many more, you can only find it in the Crimeshield Podcast. And as always, keep it Crimeshield. See you next time.